Welcome to Paradise in the Pines, a podcast about the people, places, and stories that make this the home of American golf. Brought to you by the Pinehurst Southern Pines Aberdeen Area Convention and Visitors Bureau. Hello again, everybody. I'm Phil Wurz, President and CEO of the Pinehurst Southern Pines Aberdeen Area Convention and Visitors Bureau. We are at the U.S. Open. We're going to do several shows over the course of the next couple of months. Our very first guest is Ryan Lavner, correspondent from Golf Channel. And Ryan, great to see you again, man.
Great to see you, Phil.
You were here back in May for Media Day. I was surprised you'd never been in all your coverage, but we haven't had a U.S. Open here in 10 years, but you'd never been to Pinehurst before. What were your first impressions?
I'd been to Pinehurst. I'd never brought my clubs to Pinehurst.
Okay.
Big difference. I covered the 2014 U.S. Open here, won in a rout by Martin Keimer, but I foolishly left my clubs at home. I vowed to not make that same mistake, and we had a great day.
Yeah, we did.
Playing number 2. And then number 10, which was just recently opened the following day. It was a great day. We had perfect weather. The golf course, you could tell that with just a slight haircut could have hosted a U.S. Open the next day. And obviously we're here now, and it looks absolutely incredible.
What does it compare to? You were here 10 years ago. I mean, we've been here obviously for months. We live here and we see the infrastructure go over. We're like, man, there's the buzz just keeps increasing for U.S. Open. You've covered Masters, U.S. Open, British, all the majors and great championships, elevated events, whatever. What is this vibe like when you come to Pinehurst and see this compared to what you saw in 14?
I think it's certainly different than any other major championship. It's similar to Augusta or a St. Andrews, where if you are coming to a Pinehurst U.S. Open, you are a diehard golf fan.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have many people who are just sort of casual about it. You know Pinehurst as sort of one of golf's meccas in the States, and I think you see that represented here with the folks who are milling about. Obviously, the infrastructure and the build-out is amazing. And I was thinking back, I mean, this is the first, I would say, full fan experience at a U.S. Open since probably 2019.
Yeah.
We think back to COVID,
right.
the reduced in 2021, and then the Country Club and LACC last year also had just sort of a limited footprint just because of where they were in the country. And so I think it's going to be really exciting just to see the number of people who are going to be here. We may not hear many roars, because there's probably not going to be all that many birdies, but I think just the general environment and the vibe out here should be just amazing with some golf diehards.
By the time we post this, we'll know who the U.S. Open champion is, but the day you had a chance to play it and covering here, what kind of style of game does it take? I would imagine this is an approach shot golf course, so like Colin Morikawa would probably come to mind. Who would be other guys you think, as we post this after the Open, you may be prophetic, who would fare well at a place like this?
I would probably never go wrong while saying Scottie Scheffler, right? I mean, he was a 3-1 favorite pre-tournament.
Right.
Levels we have not seen since Tiger Woods at the 2009 PGA Championship. But when I was talking to my colleague Rex Hoggard on our podcast on Sunday night, immediately following the Memorial Tournament, I said, looking ahead to Pinehurst, Scottie's game actually fits this golf course better than any of the other major championships that he would see. The reason why is approach play. And you and I, you've experienced a lot more than I, obviously, but distance control, precision into the greens, which are much smaller with sort of the shelves that you have to hit them into.
Yeah.
No one controls their distance better than Scottie Scheffler. And so if you go off that basis, he is tops in the field in that respect. If he does happen to miss a green, and if guys are going to miss plenty of greens this week at the U.S. Open, you have to be able to scramble. And we've seen that over the 3 previous U.S. Opens here. Regardless of the winner, that has been the player who can get up and down with the most frequency is typically near the top of the leaderboard. And so Scottie, I think on the PGA Tour, it can be pretty one-dimensional, where if you miss a green, you're in sort of thick collar rough around. You just grab a 60, lay it open, and go play. Here, there's just so much variety of shots that you can play, and Scottie has a deeper arsenal than other players, where he can bump and run with a 7-iron. He can pull out the 60 and hit a nipper. He can just play a variety of different shots, where I feel like a lot of the other top players, whether it's a Colin Morikawa, a Bryson DeChambeau, a Brooks Koepka, they're a little bit one-dimensional around the green. So for that aspect, approach play and scrambling, pre-tournament at least, Phil, pre-tournament, I think you have to really like Scottie.
When you see events when they're shooting like 18, 20 under, these guys are just making birdie after birdie, but obviously this is not that type of golf course. obviously you have to have a great game, and you mentioned the short game, but what about the mental game? I think probably you may or may not disagree or agree with this, but I mean, there's probably been nobody more mentally tough at this point outside of Tiger Woods back in 2000 than Scottie Scheffler. How big is that on a course like this where birdies are a premium?
I think it's absolutely huge. Scottie has exhibited the rare quality to be very patient on the golf course. Rory has really struggled with that as you look now into his major drought, which has extended more than a decade. He seems to press at inopportune times, and I don't think anyone in the current game certainly does a better job of staying in the moment, kind of being disciplined around a golf course than Scottie Scheffler. It does not look spectacular in its totality, or even when you're in the moment, but it adds it up, and it's a 67, 68, 69. He has the ability to develop a game plan with his caddy, Ted Scott, but I think more importantly, he has the physical capabilities of executing that game plan, and it's just, this is a plotter's type golf course. Put the ball in the fairway, and then you have to be so strategic with where you're going to place that ball.
Mentality of the player is so important, but the mentality of the reporter is important as well. We're here at the U.S. Open. We're just off Thistledew, the putting green for the players for the U.S. Open. And what's your game plan as you come to a major or cover a golf event? It kind of takes us behind the curtain there as a reporter with Golf Channel. We look forward to seeing your work, by the way. It's Monday as we record this. What is basically your plan through the practice rounds, trying to get stories, and then as you get into competitive rounds of the week?
So I have a little bit of a dual responsibility, which to me is a lot of fun, where I'll do live from the U.S. Open. So I'll be on the desk on Wednesdays, sort of in the analyst role, which is a lot of fun. And then Rex Hogger and I will do reports for live from 7 or 8 minute segments, in addition to our typical writing responsibilities. And so obviously those are two wildly different things, one sort of an analyst and one sort of a reporter. When it comes to the reporting, my job, and you and I are both standing here with our credentials on, my job is
yours is more important than mine.
There seems to be different
and your
colors.
picture looks like
we have a sticker.
Look like you're 14 years old. Was that from 10 years ago? Oh, there we go.
I know we have an updated one, and apparently Golf Channel did not get the memo that that's my updated headshot from a couple years ago. But I try to use the credential in its most effective way, and to me that is taking a reader or a viewer or a listener somewhere that they can't just pick up by watching the myriad hours of coverage that we have on Golf Channel. So that can be a soundbite, that can be a scene, that can be a different anecdote, that can be something that you pick up from watching inside the ropes. All that is really integral to the coverage that I try to provide, because there's going to be 8 to 10 million people who are tuning in on Sunday. I have to give
something we don't know,
or listener something that they don't know.
Dude, I got to tell you, the most incredible thing, and Tom Pashley said there is nothing like this in the game of golf. If you go into the clubhouse, which is, I'm a member here, before they redid that clubhouse, it wasn't something that very flattering. You'd see, Ricky Fowler, Rory Scottie walking in there. It was not a good, they did an amazing job of renovating that clubhouse and the locker room area. But to this point I'm making is that the walkway out, when you walk through the lower level of the clubhouse, past the members' merchandise, downstairs, you walk down this hallway, turn a little bit to the left, to the right, step up, you were on stage, basically, at the first hole of Pinehurst No. 2, and Tom Pashley, the president of the resort, said there's nothing like that in golf. I can totally see a Steadicam with Scottie, whoever, on Sunday at the end of that tunnel, walking up and emerging and seeing this Roman Coliseum type atmosphere here on 18 as they walk over to 1.
Marion's like the only other golf course that I can think of where you can have people sort of eating breakfast before you get to the first tee. I love that atmosphere. It just feels bigger. It feels grander. I mean, on Sunday afternoon, those players are going to be feeling something that they've never felt before heading into a golf tournament. I think it just sort of adds to the general vibe that we have here at Pinehurst, which is just dedicated to golf, and they absolutely love it.
You talk about, getting the story or, tell us something we don't already know. How important is it as a reporter to gain the trust of these players? Because, all it takes is one bad story. You still have to do your job, and you still have to tell the facts how they are and see it as you see it. But, how important is it to build those relationships with these players that can be kind of sensitive sometimes?
Oh, I think, that's sort of the cornerstone of what we do. Without a player's trust or respect, you really don't have anything. I've always kind of had certain goals where if I approach a player on the range, I want to get to a point where they at least know who I am. who, if I'm going up to them and I have to ask them a sensitive topic, it's not this complete stranger who
Sure.
they have no idea, which is almost an automatic no. And so it certainly takes time, it takes effort to get to that point with the 144, 156 players that you have week in and week out on the PGA Tour. But I think it also goes just to storytelling, and it allows you to sort of activate something in a player that maybe they're not totally comfortable doing on camera. And so that's been a huge priority for us at Golf Channel, and sort of my role is in-depth storytelling. And I can't help but think of North Carolina's own Grayson Murray, who just died by suicide a couple of weeks ago. I know he's being memorialized here at the U.S. Open as well. I did a very in-depth profile of Grayson Murray back in 2017, where he'd kind of been lambasted by some of his critics. He was seemingly disliked by some of his peers because of some of the behaviors he had exhibited. I did a deep dive into his depression and his social anxiety, and that could only come through the relationship that I'd forged with him since I first began in golf in 2010. One of the first stories I ever wrote for Golf Week magazine was a story on Grayson Murray at an AJGA event. And so that's the sort of level of detail that you can gain just by spending time and caring about these players as more than just golfers. I mean, there's so many different media outlets now, whether it's the Associated Press, which is a wire service, or your Fried Egg, which is getting into sort of the architecture standpoint. I've always tried to humanize the athletes I've covered. I've always sort of prioritized the in-depth, longer profiles that go just beyond the birdies and bogeys.
You've been in the business for a while. Talk about how it all got started. You're a Bulldog, University of Georgia. You're from Canandaigua, New York. I didn't know that until I did some research. You're from upstate New York. So talk about how you got into journalism, and obviously you love it, and you excel at it, and you do extremely well. Talk about how, if anybody wants to get in to do what you're doing. I
was very lucky where I knew early teens that I wanted to get into sports writing. I realized that a lot of people are, they go even into their 20s and 30s not really sure about what they wanted to do, but having my name in a newspaper was always sort of the goal. And so I was writing for my city newspaper when I was in middle school.
Yeah.
Like it was something that came very naturally. I studied it kind of like an art form. I went to the University of Georgia, which is obviously a long way from home. Basically just to cover big-time Division I athletics. And I had a couple great mentors, whether it was a professor at Georgia who was a former AP war correspondent or my sports editor at the Athens Banner-Herald, allowed me to have opportunities right away to cover big-time athletics. That was back in the mid-2000s. I started at Georgia in 2005 and graduated in 2009. I think the perception of younger journalists has definitely shifted. Yeah. Where when I was starting in 2005 to 2009, it was like, you gotta pay your dues. You start and you climb the ladder. After 20 years, you can finally be, the columnist in the newspaper. I feel like that sort of barrier to entry has been eliminated, which I think is great. Because if you go in the media center right now, I mean, it's definitely skewing younger. Yeah. There's more interest.
Social media.
There's so many different avenues to do what you want to do. I was very much a generalist, and now it's these younger journalists who have carved out certain niches, which I think kind of benefits the game in general. But my big break, and it's another media member, is Beth Ann Nichols at Golf Week. And I was at a small newspaper right out of college in Sebring, Florida, which is retirement capital of the world.
I know for the racetrack down there too.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's a funny story. I was trying to get out before I had to cover that.
Right.
But there was a women's amateur event called the Harder Hall Invitational, very famous women's amateur event, and I covered that thing like it was the 2019 Masters.
Yeah.
Like special sections, taking pictures, laying out the pages, writing columns, writing features, writing news. Like completely blew it out. And that coverage, I sent it to Beth Ann. I was like, I'd love to work for Golf Week. Let me know. Did not have any openings. 2 weeks later, someone on the web desk quit. They had all my clips recently, hired, and off and running ever since.
Hey, man, it's all about timing, right?
Exactly.
Talk about the race in Sebring. Were you going to tell a story there?
That was going to be a very short story. My goal was to get out. I know nothing about auto racing. My goal was to get out because it was going to be like a 50-page special section,
right.
And the amount of homework I would have to do just so I didn't look like a complete idiot in written copy. That was always my goal to get out of Sebring. I got out the week before.
Gotcha. So you were at Georgia before they won the national championship. So talk about some of the players that you covered when you were there.
Oh, this was like the era of, if you guys are familiar, like the Sports Illustrated preseason rankings where Georgia would be number one and then they'd end up losing 4 times. So this was the Matt Stafford, AJ Green, No Sean Morena. It was a great era to be there. But as a fan, as a spectator, as an observer, it was maddening because you have so much sort of talent that was obvious on the field, and it could never translate into a victory.
They were Clemsoning while Clemson was Clemsoning.
That's a great way to put it. And Mark Richt, who's actually a close family friend of my wife's, great guy, just could seemingly never get over the hump. Now that we have Kirby, where it's great to be a part of a juggernaut.
Yeah.
Like I used to always have to like hide my Georgia shirts, in December and January until the sting of a late season loss would sort of wear off.
Yeah.
Now you can wear the Georgia stuff all year round, and you can wear it with pride.
Okay, we're just right a short distance, probably like, pitching wedge for you, probably 8 iron for me from the Golf Channel studio here at Pinehurst No. 2. Let's go behind the curtain at Golf Channel there. So somebody had posted, it might have been Todd Lewis of Frank Nobilo putting a tie on. I basically get to the point of who's the best dressed between you, Todd Lewis, Rich Lerner, all those guys. I mean, you guys are like, pretty styling. And Todd, he's pretty strong.
He is. Some would say too strong, a little bit too bold, too aggressive in some of his sartorial choices. Full disclosure, I am wildly colorblind.
Really?
And so I have had someone picking out my clothes since probably I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
Whether it was my mom, whether it was a girlfriend in college, whether it's now my wife. And so she is laying out in my suitcase, okay, here's your Monday outfit.
Right.
Here's your Tuesday outfit.
Just like the players do.
It's I have scripting for the major championship. So I would have to exclude myself from this conversation just because I do have I do have some.
Well, at least you're truthful.
Yes, I think Brandel has a very strong game.
Yeah.
I do think by and large we're a little bit more conservative in golf media on camera, where we tend to wear a lot of white shirts,
some pastels.
So I tend to bring some flower ties just to spruce it up. Like when I'm on the desk, I think I've got like a yellow a yellow tie now that we're still in spring. But yeah, like honestly, it is such a great group of guys.
Yeah, it seems like it.
To work with. I know everyone has certain coworkers that they don't like. I can honestly say I wouldn't have been at Golf Channel for 12 years if I didn't absolutely adore the people that I work with at every single level. It's been such a joy.
I was a journalism major at James Madison, and then worked in TV for a while. I was at ESPN. I was a researcher, so you had to know number crunch everything, and I love stats and stuff like that. How much? It's just amazing. I mean, I'm sure researchers help you, but it seems like Brandel Chamblee, he'll remember a shot from like 1985 at some obscure event. I'm like, how does he know that?
Oh, I mean, he's got a sick and twisted mind. There's no doubt. We have a great research team. Kevin Casey's been a great friend for a long time. I helped him get his start at Golf Week magazine. But a lot of that, to be honest with you, is Brandel doing his own deep dives.
I think he posted this whole note thing he did at this past weekend, ready for this.
He's all by hand.
Wow,
which is really just
it's just and that helped you remember. I'm sure. It's sick just seeing the yellow notepads that he has. Like whenever anyone criticizes Brandel for his takes and they just say, "Oh, he's just a hot take artist," you have absolutely no idea. He does his
homework. Guy does more homework than anyone in golf media combined.
Wow.
I mean, the guy is thoroughly prepared. You might not always agree with his findings or his outcomes or the set of facts that he's using, but you cannot tell me that he's just spouting off at the hip about what he thinks about something.
You know what? Everybody's entitled to an opinion, but if you can back it up, it's a big part of it too.
And he's the lead analyst position. So very happy for him.
Yeah.
He's earned
he deserves
earned that spotlight.
No question. I know you cover professional golf, but you also have a deep knowledge and coverage with the collegiate game. It's changed quite a bit over the recent years. Does NIL change that at all? I was just kind of curious getting ready for this interview.
I think golf is starting to catch up. I think what the big difference over the past couple of years, though, Phil, was the introduction of this program called PGA Tour University, which has incentivized graduating seniors with either a PGA Tour card as the number one guy.
Ludwig Oberg was the first one.
Exactly. 2 through 5 gets Korn Ferry Tour, full Korn Ferry Tour cards, and then the rest is conditional status on either the Korn Ferry Tour or now they're calling it the PGA Tour Americas, which was essentially the old Latino America and Canadian tours. That has made a huge difference because there was always sort of this should he, shouldn't he dilemma that a sophomore or a junior would face when you start racking up credentials, you start playing for national teams, maybe you win a national championship or a regional title, whatever the case may be. I think there was a lot of skepticism when the program was first introduced that guys were still going to bail. I think the exact opposite has happened, where people are seeing the benefit of staying in school for 4 years. And even Gordon Sargent, who's the number one ranked amateur in the world, Vanderbilt stud, won an NCAA championship his freshman year, he has decided to stay in school when I think it's pretty obvious that he's ready to go to the next level just to make sure he's as prepared as possible, but also knowing that he has a PGA Tour card in his back pocket. He doesn't have to sort of rush into anything. I think that's made a huge difference in college golf over these past couple of years, which has made it even more loaded.
You mentioned Gordon Sargent from Vanderbilt. His teammate, Jackson Van Paris, is from here, has played Pinehurst No. 2 dozens of times, competed well in the North and South. We're kind of hoping he was going to make the field here at the Open. It didn't happen, but I'm sure it will happen one day. Talk about him just so we have some local knowledge of a local kid, Jackson Van Paris.
Don't know too much about him. I obviously know the college program that he's a part of. And if you're a part of Vanderbilt golf, like you clearly are a stud. I believe he was, if not the top-ranked junior in the country, he was at least top 5, top 10. I mean, he certainly has the hallmarks of a very competitive player for the next decade or so.
When we played here that day on May the 6th for Media Day, and we kind of knocked around the golf course a little bit, and you said it was like razor thin to get it ready for a U.S. Open. What's interesting is we promote it from a tourism side, and the resort does as well, is that Pinehurst No. 2 is U.S. Open ready every day. Yeah. All you have to do is just speed up the greens a little bit, but they did plant I believe 500 or 5,000, they call them pine blossoms. They're not weeds, it's not wiregrass, but I got into a few of those clumps on that day. And before I remember playing number 2, and you might, there's probably about a 25% chance you get in one of those, and it's now like probably 75, 80%. So you get haywire on this golf course now, it can be fairly penal.
This sounds a little bit lame to talk about, but I thoroughly enjoyed while playing number 2 for the first time. And again, I covered the U.S. Open here, walked around the golf course, obviously seen it on TV a million times. But there is a certain level of suspense and mystery when you hit a tee-ball offline. Like not knowing what you're going to have.
You're right.
Are you going to be absolutely dead? Are you going to have a clean shot? Is your stance going to be impacted? Is your lie going to be impacted? I love that element. Because if you look, any golf course you play, probably not in a major championship or even a PGA Tour caliber condition, like you hit in the rough, okay, it's probably going to be thick, it's going to be juicy. It sort of takes some of the suspense away.
Yeah.
This was not that at all. Like you're walking a little bit quicker to get to your ball just to see what you're going to face. And look, if you have a clean lie in sort of the sandy area, you can get the club on the back of it.
Yeah.
You can spin it. You can stop it. You can still conceivably make a birdie. If not, there is just an immense range of outcomes that you could have just based on your lie, based on your stance. Does your club flip over? Does it flail open? Like I absolutely loved that element of playing the golf course that I don't think. I'm trying to think of another course that we're even seeing in golf this year that even has that same level of anticipation with the approach play.
We got a chance to play Pinehurst No. 10, the brand new Pinehurst No. 10, which opened on April the 3rd this year. In this series here at the U.S. Open, we're going to be interviewing Angela Moser, who helped Tom Doak with the construction of that golf course. What were your impressions of number 10 as we wrap up?
I absolutely loved it. I mean, I played that the day after number 2, and I immediately thrust that into the top 10 that I've ever played. Like it was that quick. And you've played,
And unlike any other course you're going to find in the Sandhills, for sure.
It's a remarkable piece of property. The layout, the design. I was struck by how grown in it already is.
Yeah.
You'd think it had already been there for 5 or 10 years. I mean, you've played a million golf courses. When you play it when it's brand new, it's super firm. It's not a whole lot of fun. It seemed like it had been there. And so I think people are absolutely going to love it. I've seen all of the reviews for it. It has been amazing. And so I mean, if people somehow needed another reason to come to Pinehurst and play golf. Pinehurst number 10 certainly puts that on the map even more.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to your coverage during the U.S. Open. Look forward to you coming back with your golf clubs to play. Ryan Lavner, you do a fantastic job on Golf Channel. We watch all your coverage, and we'll continue to do so. Ryan Lavner, correspondent from Golf Channel. Hey, if you want to learn more about tourism in Moore County, home of the 124th U.S. Open, go to homeofgolf.com. For our videos, go to our YouTube channel, Home of American Golf. And if you like this podcast, search for Paradise in the Pines, download it, and share it with your friends. We'll see you next time. Crazy.